Alright, so what we're looking at now are the solenoids. We have the solenoids. If you notice, you have some red wires and black wires. And that is really a good way, the quickest way to identify the difference between your nitrous solenoid and your fuel solenoid. And I must tell you that you cannot use, do not recommend to use one or the other for different applications. You need to stick with nitrous is nitrous and fuel is fuel. It has a lot to do with the type of plunger that's in them and amperage and all that. We'll cover that a little bit, but let me go ahead and go over some horsepower ranges here. All right, we got the small solenoids, okay? These are your power shot solenoids. They're good up to about 175, 200 horsepower at the very max if you max them out. We recommend, not going over 200 horsepower. Your nitrous, black wires, fuel, red wires. That's typically across the board, always the same. If you ever have any doubt, you can always just look at the sticker. It'll say on the sticker, okay? If you notice, you got two ports on the solenoid. One port, it does identify the word in. That is the inlet side of the solenoid. That's where your supply is coming from and is going to. The other side of the solenoid is the outlet. It is a must that you do not get them mixed up because they will not work properly. They will fail every time. Okay? Moving on to the next ones. These next solenoids, these are your pro solenoids, and they are compatible up to about 350, 400 horsepower. Once again, your blacks are nitrous, your reds are fuel, pretty typical. All your solenoids like that's going to be the same. You'll notice that one side is bigger than the other as far as the fittings. Your inlet side is typically always bigger. The fitting is always bigger, and it's a 1/4 inch NPT. Not always, but sometimes. And your outlet on the solenoid, your big solenoids, are 1/8 NPT outlets. That is the common one, but there are different circumstances will call for different applications. Okay, moving right along, you see right here, we have another solenoid. Now let me go over you with something right here. If you notice, you've got two fittings on the sides and you've got one fitting on the bottom. Well, there's also a fitting on the side right here, okay? What this is called is, this is your bottom exit solenoid. This solenoid and this nitrous solenoid, they're both the same. The only difference is the outlet of the solenoid. One is on the side, one is on the bottom, okay? Now, why that is your bottom exit solenoids will tend to flow a little bit more nitrous than your side exit solenoids because of the path of the travel of the nitrous. It comes into the side directly out the bottom, as the side exit has to come up around the plunger and out the side. It will slow the flow down, but you really won't see that big of a difference. This is typically for your more bigger, higher horsepower, somebody who's really trying to get that extra little bit of nitrous out of their kit, okay? Right here, if you see this big Coke can type solenoid, this is your biggest one they got. This is capable up to about 550 to 600 horsepower. This will typically take care of anything you throw at it. The coil is much bigger, so therefore there's a huge plunger on the inside of it, so that a lot of nitrous can flow through this solenoid. What we got here is a wrench. Okay, what we've already done is disassembled a solenoid for you. All right. Now it's careful when you disassemble a solenoid. You can take this thing all the way to the internals or out. What's really important is using the proper tools for the application. I can't stress this enough. Don't be using no channel locks or anything on this plunger. It's not good. It's there for a reason to be smooth. All right. And you get your wrench. You got two holes. You put it in there and you turn it and unscrew it. You can unscrew it all the way out. This is typically what it looks like on the inside. You got an O-ring, you have a spring that retracts the plunger back down when the system is turned off, and you have the plunger, that's what seals it, so the nitrous does not pass through when the system's turned off. Okay? Alright. Now what I want to kind of talk to you about, just briefly, I don't want to kind of get you lost, but let's talk about amperage and why you can't use the nitrous and the fuel against each other. The nitrous coil obviously has a lot of nitrous pressure up against this plunger that you just seen. And it takes a lot of magnetic field to pull that plunger up to allow nitrous to go through. So the only way to do that is these coils have to pull a lot of amperage. Okay, as the fuel is not like that. The fuel takes less amperage because there's less pressure up against that seat. So your fuel's small solenoids, your fuel typically pulls about 2 amps of amperage. Your nitrous typically pulls about 10 to 12 amperage. On your bigger ones, same thing goes. Your big nitrous has a lot of nitrous pressure up against that plunger, so therefore it takes a lot of amperage, a lot of magnetic to pull that thing up. Typically your nitrous big solenoid probe pulls about 18 amps. Your fuel probe pulls about 2 to 4 amps. These two are about the same amperage, they're just bigger. Same thing with this bottom exit, pulls about 18 amps. Now this big one here, you would think that this thing pulls a whole lot more amperage, but really in reality it does not. Because the windings of the coil inside are so much and so great that it doesn't take as much force to pull it up because the coil is so big. So typically this pulls about 2 amperage less than your nitrous solenoids. Now if you could just come right here to me, I just wanted to get you this, what we have are 2 brackets. These brackets have the slotted holes. Well, the bottom of the solenoids have holes, and your screws will screw into the bottom of the solenoid, and this is your bracket will go to your solenoids. Right here, your 4. What this does, it allows you to put 2 small solenoids on one bracket. Different applications will require different things. So that is typically the basics of this solenoid section.